Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Lasagna, and this is episode number 239 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for all you filthy casual sports fans out there. And in this episode, we're here to talk about putting a wrap on the 2024 season for my team, the San Francisco 49ers. Now, for the last time we did this, for the last couple of times that we did this, I believe since the existence of the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, we've done this later than usual. But since the Niners have exited unceremoniously from their season earlier than usual, I thought, might as well, put a bow on their season, put a wrap on their season earlier than usual as well. So that's exactly what we're doing here on the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast here in this episode. Putting in a bow on what was an unceremonious follow-up to last year's attempt to quote-unquote finish the story. And what exactly was that finish the story? Well, that attempt to finally get title number 6. So what exactly went wrong for these San Francisco 49ers in this episode, and hopefully try to dissect some of the positives in what was a lost season for the San Francisco 49ers. Before we get into all that, though, make sure you follow Very Cold Lasagna on social media, at Very Cold Lasagna, wherever I'm at on the social media thingy. Yes, the thing, pal. And then for all my audio listeners out there, make sure to continue listening to the Very Cold Lasagna Podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And for all my people watching on YouTube, make sure to smash the like button. Leave your comments down below with your own takes on each and every episode. In this case, it being my San Francisco 49ers and the 2024 NFL season as a whole. And what were your takeaways from it? It can be good or bad about my 49ers and what they need to do to get better next year. And share this with your friends, share this with your neighbors, share this with your strangers, share this with your colleagues, whether it's at work or school. Share the good, the bad, the ugly about Very Cold Lasagna. And again, like I said, make sure you follow me on socials and subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're not already. So that being said, let's get right into it. Looking back at my San Francisco 49ers and, well, this season, this 2024 season, the follow-up of what I like to call the failure to finish the story and the consequences of failing to finish the story. So why do I say finish the story? What exactly, why the phrase finish the story? Why am I grabbing a phrase that the current WWE champion Cody Rhodes had been using at this point, like almost like a few years ago, and then especially last year when he eventually finished his story, becoming the WWE champion at WrestleMania last year. Well, mainly because the Niners had a great opportunity. They had a great opportunity to finally finish their story of finally capturing elusive title number 6 at the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. They had endured 2 very hard games that, well, they honestly made on themselves. But nonetheless, that's besides the point. In the playoffs, despite being the number 1 seed, they had to come back against the Green Bay Packers. They were in a back and forth affair. And then they were down 24-7 against the Detroit Lions. And they clawed their way back into that game. And that was probably one of the gutsiest performances in Niners history. But nonetheless, they had a great opportunity to finally get the monkey off their back of not being able to get title number 6 and get the monkey off their back against a familiar foe that they lost to before. That foe being Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and the Kansas City Chiefs. They had to hopefully overcome that foe that they lost to in Miami a couple years ago to finally finish the story of title number 6. Unfortunately, though, they didn't. They didn't again. Now, a lot of things went their way in the wrong way. What exactly those were? Well, for example, Dre Greenlaw getting hurt. The special teams play, and I believe it's in the third quarter, that got the Chiefs back in the game. That botched punt return. And then we had Spencer Burford in overtime when the Niners were in clear position to win the game on a touchdown on their turn to strike within distance. Yeah, Spencer Burford didn't block what was his name? Chris Jones. Yeah, on that third down play. Had to settle for a field goal. And then from there, yeah, we all knew what was going to happen when it came to Mahomes and game-winning drives. Yeah, we all knew what happened from there. So the Niners failed to finish the story. And from there, yeah, I kind of had this feeling. I had this feeling. I talked about it last year immediately after that game. And then when we did the season recap on the podcast that was their best chance. It felt like their best chance to win the Super Bowl, finally finish the story, because I felt like there's going to be a winds of change in this team going into the offseason. Like for example, like when you look back at their offseason last year, after this team lost the Super Bowl once again to the Chiefs, I mean, sure, the goal was simple. You get back to the Super Bowl and finish the story. Just this time in New Orleans. But man, that was easier said than done. Like, you had to go and replace Steve Wilkes, who Kyle Shanahan fired immediately after the Super Bowl because, well, he was like the name of debate amongst the Niners players and the fan base. Like a little bit like the regression. The regression on defense. So they fire Steve Wilkes and they bring in Nick Sorensen, and we'll talk about Nick Sorensen in a good amount in this recap. So they handled the defensive coordinator situation, but then they have to address free agency, because in free agency there's a lot of pieces that they weren't able to keep because, well, their salary cap was pretty low. So they lose the likes of Clinton Farrell, Chase Young, Oren Burks, and Sam Darnold, who went on to become a resurgence in Minnesota this year. And they also released Eric Armstead because, well, he refused to take a pay cut. So, you want to take a pay cut? Well, see ya. So they tried to address some of these key departures on defense by signing Leonard Floyd, Una Gross-Matos, and Jordan Elliott to hopefully, give the defensive line a boost. So, yeah, they did all that in the offseason. And, of course, they attacked the draft with the likes of Renardo Green, Dominic Pooney, and then again, the first-round pick being Ricky Pearsall. And then at the time, I thought, like, why receiver? Why a receiver with the 31st overall pick when we needed what I thought was a major need? The offensive line. Like, the offensive line, which was a clear problem for this team for the last, I believe, 2-3 years in counting, which got Jimmy G hurt, Trey Lance hurt, and then Brock Purdy hurt. Like, why was this thing that Kyle Shanahan continues to neglect? And then they go out and get another receiver. I don't know, but my stance on that has changed a little bit on Ricky Pearsall. But we'll talk about why exactly that it is as well. So they do all that in the offseason. And then when it comes to, these subtractions and additions, I thought it was a little mixed. So the offseason, in my opinion, when it came to that, it was okay. It was all right. And so now it came to training camp, and when I talked about them in my season preview, I thought, that the goal remains simple. The goal remains simple for this team. Get out there, go and finish the story. Like, that's pretty much all Kyle Shanahan had to do. But of course, the question remains, like, can they actually do it? Can Kyle Shanahan actually, get this team, coach up this team to go out there, make a run at the playoffs, win the division. Well, first and foremost, and actually do it, because things are going to be a lot harder. Especially within the NFC. You had the Lions, the Packers, the Eagles the first two teams were on the up and up. And then you had the Eagles surging back up. You also had questions within your own division too, with the Rams trying to get healthy again. The Seahawks, getting a new head coach. So you had all these questions. As well. Had you actually finished the story, sure, it would have been the same questions, except that, well, you just had to defend the title. Now that you didn't defend the title, those questions become even larger for the team. So you get to the actual season. And sure, they win the first game. They win the first game against the Jets. And everything seemed to be okay in the first game, but that turned out to be a mirage. Because they get their butts whooped in Minnesota. They blow a 30-point lead, a 10-plus point lead in the fourth quarter against the Rams, division rival, mind you. And then 2 games later, blow another 10-point lead against another division rival in Arizona, against Arizona at home, mind you. And they didn't score at all in the second half. And then they almost blow another lead to the Seahawks in Seattle just a couple of days later. And then they get their butts whooped the next week against Kansas City in the rematch of that Super Bowl. And then they almost blow another lead to the Cowboys late in the fourth quarter. Like boy, this Niners team is really something, huh? But, some people were willing to pass that. They were 4-4 going to the bye week. And normally this was the time where they were going to turn things around. But this felt really different because this team was really cutting it close. The quality of play with this team just didn't feel right. This didn't really feel right for a team that made it to 3 straight NFC Championship games. I mean, I get it. They're coming off a Super Bowl loss. But at 4-4, just something didn't feel right about this team. And lo and behold, even with the bye week, nothing changed. Actually, it got worse. They only won 2 more games after the bye week. And in almost all their losses, they got their butts whooped. They got their butts whooped against the Packers, got their butts whooped against the Bills, got whooped in Miami, got whooped by Detroit, got whooped by Arizona. And almost all their losses, they allowed 30 or more points. That's really bad. Like the offense also, they couldn't click. They really couldn't click. Now, few of the some of them were injured. I'll give it that, but like some of the starters were still there as well. So it's just like oof. So why exactly did they go 6-11? Yeah, they ended their season at 6-11. That's where the Niners stood to end the year. They're dead last in the division, and they have the 11th overall pick to end the year. And yeah, people were relishing. They're relishing at the downfall of the 49ers. But why exactly did things go way south for this team? Well, you got to look back at this point almost last year when they immediately lost the Super Bowl. The drama on this team, the drama and the ego. Like as soon as you hit Instagram, like just hours after the Super Bowl, was it hours or a day? Either one. Brandon Ayuk and his agent immediately go on social media to start up the negotiating tactics for his contract extension. I'm like, dude, you just lost the Super Bowl. Like, why are you doing this now? It's like, what are you doing? Like it would be one thing if you finish the story like they were supposed to, and then hold back that talk. But no, they're seeking attention. They're seeking attention like right out of the gate, and this thing would become a 7-month long issue of will they, won't they, or he said, she said, like, oh, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because of Ayuk's contract demands and Lynch's willingness to sit on it until the very last minute. And then you even had these shenanigans of both sides, like Ayuk doing this hold in during training camp where he was just basically there but not practicing like every day. And then at one point, after, I believe it was like during training camp or like at one practice after he got signed to that big fat extension, Kyle Shanahan was yelling at his ass for wearing the wrong shorts during practice. Like, yeah, very, very trivial, but still not a good look, man. And then even when he was on the field, he didn't do good. Ayuk did not do good other than one game, Arizona. I believe it was the Arizona game where he broke almost 100 yards in that game. But still, every other game before he got hurt, yeah, we'll get to that point. He clearly underperformed because, well, he didn't go to training camp, or he was at training camp but he didn't practice. And again, his attention-seeking tactics. Then, of course, going back to that point of getting hurt, tore his ACL and his MCL. And I believe he also tore something else as well, but I don't know. That's besides the point. So he tears his ACL and MCL in week 7 against the Chiefs. And I'm not sure where he is at now with his recovery. But, yeah. I mean, I don't want to wish that kind of thing to injured players, but it's like, it's what you get because you did that. But yeah, not a good look for Brandon Ayuk, and not sure if he's going to be the same player that he was when after he had these kind of injury. So, I mean, hope he'll have some semblance of it, but it's kind of like a you deserve it kind of thing after being all up in yourself. So yeah, the whole Brandon Ayuk drama, that was one catalyst. And another catalyst was Trent Williams, the left tackle. He decided to join on the fun. He also decided to, rather than Brandon Ayuk, hold out for what ended up being a revised contract, becoming one of the highest paid offensive linemen in the NFL, if not the highest. And he eventually ended up being sidelined 10 games with an ankle injury. So, yeah, these players being greedy and then ends up costing them. So he also ends up missing training camp. And then he ends up rusty in the season because, well, he wants more money. And then not going to be too hard on Trent Williams, like with some things, because he also dealt with personal tragedy. And yeah, that was the thing too with this team. They just not only were dealing with injuries, but they were dealing with a lot of personal issues, a lot of like heartbreaking stuff during the season. Like there's a lot of emotional toll in this season. Like Trent Williams dealing with the loss of his stillborn son, and then 2 weeks before the season opener, Ricky Pearsall getting shot in the chest in a robbery attempt for, of all things, a Rolex in San Francisco. And I'm just very grateful that he was able to survive and he's now playing. And then you hear him in that Arizona game, like at the end of the season, that he's going to stay in San Francisco to catch up on the reps that he lost during training camp and, leading up to the season. And I believe I heard this too, that he wants to, find the person that, shot him and try to patch things up. I mean, hopefully, that person is willing to do it. I mean, try to heal up, try to patch things up, bury the hatchet. I mean, you try. And then Deebo Samuel also would try to be an attention seeker, notably punching long snapper Taylor Pepper, yelling at Jake Moody for missing a key kick during the Week 10 game in Tampa. So, yeah, Deebo also was a very negative influence on the team. And then also another incident with Deebo was, Deebo tweeting out about his lack of targets just a day before their must-win game on Thursday night against the Rams, where they really had to have that game if they wanted to stay alive in the NFC West, where it was like very small, by the way, a very small chance, and yet Debo was just like, I'm not getting targeted or anything, and then Kyle Shanahan had to change the whole game plan around to make sure Debo gets fed. Brock Purdy had to force feed him the ball to no avail. Like, even when Debo did get fed the ball, the Rams were like right on his butt. Yeah. Good job, Debo. And then Charvarius Ward, probably the most unfortunate of them all. And I feel really bad for him this season. And there's no blame to him, at all. Like, he was understandably away from the team for a couple weeks during the season. He lost his one-year-old daughter, and that sucks, man. It really sucks. And he admitted, like, in the clean out day, that he wants a new change of scenery. He's a free agent at the once the new league year starts, and if he wants a new environment, if he wants to go into a new team, honestly, I wouldn't blame him for it. Like, I totally understand him. So yeah, there's a lot of drama on this team, both for stupid reasons, and then you had pretty understandable reasons too, like the personal tragedies and all that. But just like with the 2020 season hell after they lost Super Bowl 54, this 2024 season of failure, to finish the story, injury mania ran wild again, pal, in San Francisco, because, oh boy, the injuries were so rampant. And it didn't even wait till the season started for injury mania to run wild, because you didn't even have Christian McCaffrey. I didn't even mention Christian McCaffrey yet until now, because they didn't have McCaffrey until week 10 with the Achilles tendonitis, and then you only had him for 3 to 4 games, because, well, Kyle Shanahan decided to run him into the ground, he normally used him when he still wasn't 100% yet. And then look what happened 3 weeks later in Buffalo. Suffered a PCL sprain that ended the season. Now, fortunately, he didn't suffer a severe injury, and according to him, he should be ready to go by OTAs, which is very good for him. But for Kyle Shanahan, very irresponsible for using him as normal workload, because Jordan Mason and Isaac Rindo, who were filling in for McCaffrey during his absence, doing just fine. Don't understand Kyle Shanahan's thinking. Meanwhile, speaking of those running backs, Jordan Mason, he was lost in that Bills game as well with a high ankle sprain. So basically, 2 of your running backs were gone. And then Isaac Rindo, he suffered a MCL sprain in the last game of the year. Fortunately, it was nothing else. Javon Hargrave was lost 3 games in with a partially torn triceps. So the defensive line took a really big hit. And there's basically no one to stop the run. Other guys like John Feliciano, Drake Jackson, and Elijah Mitchell, they never even saw the field at all this season. And then Dre Greenlaw, he missed most of the season recovering from the torn Achilles from the Super Bowl. He only played 1 game this year, but I mean, hey, like I said, in one of my preview recaps this year, at least we got to see him at all. And when we did see him, it looked like he was flying around as normal. It's just unfortunate, he got a right calf injury the very next week, which led to Kyle Shanahan shutting him down for the last 2 games. So, we only got 1 sample of Dre Greenlaw going into next year, where he's basically a free agent. And then you had Talanoa Hufanga, the safety, returning in week 3 from the ACL tear from last year, but then he went right back to IR with the wrist injury until week 14, which now he's sporting a big club on his hand. And then, he played out the rest of the year. And then you had multiple starters also missing a game or 2 as well, like George Kittle, Deebo Samuel, and even Brock Purdy missed a couple games this year, and especially the last game of the year against the Cardinals with the elbow injury. So, yeah, the injury mania running wild on this team. And then when you look at the on-field product, I already talked about the off-field stuff, but the on-field product, oh boy, when you look at that, how that went. Let's start with the special teams. The special teams for these 49ers, like, it was so goddamn awful. The unit gave up several big returns all season long. It was so prevalent in that week 2 game against the Minnesota Vikings. Like, they looked so unprepared for like a blocked punt in that game. And then all season long, they were unprepared for some situational things like fake punts. They couldn't secure the ball on kickoffs. And yeah, they looked so flustered on so many simple things. Like, they couldn't tackle they couldn't tackle returners. They couldn't like shut down like big kickoff returns. They allowed a couple of return touchdowns too. But perhaps the most egregious issue with this special teams unit was their kicker, Jake Moody. Now, in fairness, Jake Moody was actually okay early in the season. He wasn't, I'd say, too bad. He was bearable. But then when he came back from, I believe it was a high ankle sprain in week 10 before the bye week, he rapidly got worse and worse and worse, to the point where he was missing very makeable kicks, like long makeable kicks. The fact that Kyle Shanahan said he believed in him leading up to the Lions game, either he was just straight up delusional, or it was coach speak for, yeah, his ass is gone after the season. Because like in that Lions game, he didn't make a single kick. I believe he didn't make a single kick in that game. And one of the field goal attempts in that game, the fans were booing him even before he was about to attempt that field goal. So that should tell you, like, not just how the fans feel about Jake Moody, but how the coach feels about Jake Moody. And when you look at the rest of the on-field product, I mean, it wasn't like horrible. I still think it was very bad, but it was just very disappointing. Like, the pass rush, it was a ghost of its 2023 self. And even then with its 2023 self, it was just like, yeah, it's all right. And then Kyle Shanahan, very bad with various game situations. Like, when you're like challenging very unwinnable stuff, bad play calls, blowing leads in winnable division games. Like, Kyle couldn't coach up his players on maintaining clean, quality play. Sure, the players themselves could have executed things way better in such situations, but Kyle also had to adjust too. Like, adjust your game plan when something isn't working. Like, if your running back is running and it's not working, then pass the ball. Then have Brock Purdy throw the ball. If your quarterback is like getting intercepted, then adjust for Purdy to throw some shorter passes. Have your players adjust. And then, speaking of passing, the offense looked so disjointed, especially as the season rolled along. Especially when Brandon Ayuk got hurt, and not having Christian McCaffrey there, Purdy just felt lost. Purdy didn't have anyone to trust to throw to, I'd say, except for George Kittle. Purdy didn't even trust Deebo Samuel as a go-to receiver. Now, with Ricky Pearsall, again, I gave him leeway this season because of the unfortunate incident that happened with the gunshot to him in August. So I totally understand why it took him longer to develop, longer to get pace with the offense until like the last 2 games of the year. So tad understandable given his situation. So I'm glad that he is at least able to catch on, and hopefully he can develop that going into the offseason. But once again, Purdy was running for his life because of a terrible offensive line. Like, everyone other than Dominic Pooney was bad, like very bad. Even Trent Williams, because he missed training camp because of his stupid holdout. And yeah, they were just like bad in pass protection, bad in run blocking. It's just bad. Purdy also ate a bunch of sacks too, because either he couldn't see pressure in his face or the line won't protect him. So overall, when you look at this team, they just looked so disjointed. They looked out of place at times. Like they couldn't really like sure, the stat sheet will say, oh, they did something, but did it result in like a good record? No. Did it result in good wins? Not really. So overall, this 2024 San Francisco 49ers, it was like a very disappointing follow-up. Like, and for some understandable reasons, but for a whole lot of reasons, it was very bad. Now, not all of it was bad, though. Not all of it was bad, because when you look at this team, I did like a couple things. From this team. Like, I really like the rookies. Like, Dominic Booney, he was a very good right guard. Like, he was very good in blocking Wright Purdy's right side. Like, they just got to fix that offensive line. Malik Mustafa was a hard-hitting safety. Like, I'm not sure what round they drafted him in, but he is very good. You just got to find someone, another starting safety next to him. I'm not sure if it's going to be Hufanga anymore, but we will see. Ronaldo Green, very good corner opposite Diamador Lenore, especially in the absence of Charvarius Ward during that time. So really like Ronaldo Green. And then again, going back to the rushing duo of Jordan Mason and Isaac Grendo. During that time in CMC's absence, sure, they started off slow, but they eventually got the ball rolling. They eventually were plowing through other opposing run defenses. So I really like that, especially when they started implementing Grendo more. I really like that tandem. And then George Kittle, probably having one of the best seasons of his career. And when there were basically no weapons on that offense, Purdy just kept on going to him, and George Kittle being a wrecking machine in that passing offense. And then last but not least, the benefit of being dead last in your division and losing 11 games will net you a dead last schedule for next year. So that means it gets you a less stressful slate, as long as you take advantage of it, of course, and you stay healthy. But going back to the less stressful slate, those games that you have the Bears, the New York Giants, the Skid Marks, aka the Cleveland Browns, and then you also play the AFC South. You got the Titans, the Jaguars, and the New Orleans Saints on the docket. So when you look at this Niners team, I mean, yeah, some will say, oh, it's just a mirage because you're playing an easy schedule. But I mean, yeah, you definitely have an argument for that. But yeah, you got to take advantage of what's on the schedule too. So overall, yeah, it's definitely a downer year for the 49ers. And certainly, a year where they really should have finished the story last year. So this was a season where the Niners felt the consequences. They felt the punishment of the failure to finish the story. Like, Kyle Shanahan, I hope he realizes that he really needs to fix this team. Like, he really needs to retool this team. Stop blaming others, like as much as Rhea Ripley likes to point blame at others when she was in that feud with Liv Morgan all last year. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But yeah, Kyle's got to stop deflecting blame. Take some accountability for once. Don't stop being a Rhea Ripley. Kyle Shanahan needs to stop being a Rhea Ripley and deflecting blame. Take some accountability and fix this damn team. Retool it so you can finally finish the story. So how do you finally finish the story in 2025? Well, let's look at their offseason that's currently in progress. So when you look at their cap space, they have around $63 million to spend. So I say it's a solid amount of money. That's a very good amount to spend. So when you look at where they're placed in the NFL draft, what did I say in the last couple of games of the season after they were eliminated from playoff contention? And well, even before that, # lose them all to get a good draft position. Now, they could have lost even more, but unfortunately, more teams above them just sucked so much more that, well, the best that they could do is 11th. The 11th overall pick in the draft. So hopefully we can get something good there. And preferably offensive lineman, whether it's a center or right tackle, to replace Colin McKivitz. So I believe they have 11 total picks in this draft, but correct me if I'm wrong there. I definitely might be wrong. So I was looking at some of the key free agents going into this offseason. Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Aaron Banks, Jordan Mason, and Charvarius Mooney Ward. So that's not the whole list of free agents. Those are just like the key ones that the Niners definitely will need to re-sign. Either consider re-signing or, see ya. Oh, I already talked about Charvarius Ward that, yeah, it's best that the Niners respect his wishes and maybe let him go. But everyone else, it's up for grabs. So looking at some of the needs that they need to address this offseason, the one I really want them to address, and that has to be an absolute priority, is that offensive line. Specifically the right tackle, the left guard, and the center. So basically more than half of the offensive line. Jake Brendel, one of the worst centers in the NFL. Aaron Banks, significantly regressed and has been in and out of the lineup with injuries. Colin McKivitz, still not great, despite not being as terrible as he has been in the previous years. But all three of them frequently allow the pocket to collapse, make Purdy either run for his life in nearly every single down or get sacked quickly. So they really need to retool this offensive line. They got to get rid of these pieces and replace them with new ones. And, well, where do you start? Free agency. There are plenty of good options out there in the free agent market, like right tackle from the Philadelphia Eagles, Mekhi Becton. He's apparently a free agent. The swing tackle from the LA Rams, Eric Jackson. The Lions right guard, Kevin Zeitler. They're among others. And, of course, you turn to the draft. You draft a center, a right tackle, a left guard. Add some depth to that group. Adding depth, adding starters is a must for this offensive line. And then along the way, you consider finding that successor at left tackle for Trent Williams. So basically, you're retooling, you're rebuilding this offensive line for pretty much all the positions. You might as well add some depth behind Dominic Pooney as well. So this offensive line is an absolute must. It's the top priority for the 49ers this offseason, especially when it comes to this next need. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, they got to make a decision on whether to give Brock Purdy this big fat contract extension and for how much. Because that's the biggest question surrounding the fan base, is whether the team will or should pay Brock Purdy. And if they do, when will they do it and for how much? Now, Brock Purdy has come out and said the sooner they do it, they get it out of the way, then the better. So, I mean, if they want to do it, then yeah, get it out of the way faster. Now, the question becomes is that how much for? I mean, Purdy started off strong early, and he's trying to make the most out of everything, despite losing Christian McCaffrey, despite losing Brandon Ayuk. But he's fell off a little bit with the little things, such as trying to force plays where it's not there, taking unnecessary sacks, throwing a couple of turnovers, a couple more of them, actually. He also didn't play well in bad weather situations or in clutch time this year, even while still having Debo, while still having Kittle, while still having Juwan Jennings, while having a coming out party Ricky Pearsall. So, yeah, like those are things to consider. He also had the elbow contusion in Week 17 against the Lions, which was his third injury to his throwing arm. Now, it's not a long-term thing, according to Kyle Shanahan and Purdy himself, but that's something to consider. In fairness, the lack of not having a proper offensive line, it doesn't help matters. But when you look at the likes of Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and I know Brock Purdy is not either of those quarterbacks, clearly not. But great quarterbacks overcome a shitty offensive line. Shanahan and Lynch, they should have the leverage when it comes to negotiations. And if Purdy and his agent want to play hardball, then the Niners could take full advantage of that, and they can make Brock Purdy play on the last year of his rookie deal if they wanted to prove his worth. So whatever route they go with, they got to bring in a quality backup just in case. Like someone like Justin Fields, Zach Wilson. I don't know, even bring in Mac Jones for all I care. But as long as it's not Kirk Cousins, like please don't bring in Kirk Cousins. Now they've already done not already done it, but they've done half of the process with this, and that's replacing Nick Sorensen and Brian Schneider. They've already fired Brian Schneider as special teams coordinator, and Schneider, he sucked. He sucked as a special teams coordinator because, as I pointed out, the special teams unit was near the worst most of the year in kickoff and punt coverage because they always looked unprepared. Just look at the last game of the year with that fake punt that they allowed to Arizona. So they already got rid of Brian Schneider. They've already reportedly announced that Nick Sorensen is not returning as the Niners defensive coordinator because he looked in over his head a lot of the times. He didn't call anything other than a standard man coverage and like basically man to man. He barely ever blitzed as a D coordinator. So they're getting rid of him as defensive coordinator, but they're looking to keep him for whatever reason. But I mean, whatever, as long as it's not defensive coordinator. But I'm not sure why exactly they didn't also let go Brandon Staley. Like, why is Brandon Staley's ass still there? Like, unless they're not considering, they're considering what I hope they're not considering doing. Like, no, get Brandon Staley's ass out of there too. So now they got to find the right, proper defense coordinator and special teams coordinator that can hopefully help this team in 2025, like the right way. Kind of better find that. And then they got to make a decision on where to offload underperforming and old players, such as Deebo Samuel, Javon Hargrave. Like basically any of these players that are just like, you know, they have these big fat contracts, but they're not living up to it right now. If they want another crack at the Super Bowl while keeping that window open long term, they got to inject some youth into their lacking depth. Like, look at all their draft picks in the last several years since Kyle Shanahan took over. It's like there have been a lot of misses, man. And when you look at the roster right now, there are a few expendables the 49ers could say sayonara to, even if it eats some dead cap. Even if it eats some dead cap post June 1st. And then probably another priority, I would put this higher up, but there's just so much more to consider. Jake Moody. You got to replace Jake Moody. There's no if, ands, or buts. Jake Moody has missed far too many critical and makeable kicks this year. I don't know how Kyle Shanahan, again, can say with a straight face how he believes in Jake Moody before seeing how he ended up doing in that same game with missing every single kick in that game. So you got to get Jake Moody out of there. No more drafting kickers in the third round or at all. Bring someone in free agency that you can rely on. And then I would also consider beefing up the interior defensive line because there hasn't been a run stopper on the D-line since DeForest Buckner was traded. And they tried to replace him with Eric Armstead. And then you had Javon Hargrave, both of which have failed. They let Clinton Farrell go, which I thought was an underrated bad move. So John Lynch, he needs to upgrade that interior D-line, both with some new starters and some quality depth. Now, when it comes to new starters, hopefully it's not like some big fat money because then it needs to go to the offensive line. And lastly, a cheap downfield receiver to replace Brandon Ayuk. I'd say in the interim because Ricky Pearsall can be that guy for now, but we don't know yet because, well, we still don't know what they're going to do with the likes of Deebo Samuel. But yeah, you got to find another option to go alongside Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, and hopefully get more playing time for Jacob Counting. Like, I can't believe it took me this long to talk about Jacob Counting because he looks like another player with potential too. So get another cheap downfield veteran receiver, especially if you move on from Deebo Samuel. Yeah. So you can have 4 receivers and then, yeah, play them all until Brandon Ayuk is healthy. So overall, when you look at this team, when you look at the San Francisco 49ers in 2024, I initially had some optimism on these 49ers going into this past season. But, man, I was wrong. That turned on its head real quick. And I knew what I said last year in February, right after the Super Bowl, right after they failed to finish the story for title number 6, that this coming season was going to turn and rear its ugly head real fast. Now, in fairness, that last part didn't turn on its ugly head real fast, but slowly and surely it did, and it got worse. Now, some will say 6-11 is not all that bad. Now, 6 wins was exactly what their margin was in 2020. But when you look at it, this is a team with Super Bowl aspirations, and they ended the year with double-digit losses again. They're 1-5 in the division. They were poorly coached. They were crippled with injury mania, running wild again. And they were blown out by more than 30 points on multiple occasions this year, especially in the last month of the season. That is very bad. So when you look at this Niners team this past year, not very good. Not very good. And some are saying, oh, 2025 is not going to be any better. Well, I mean, we don't know yet. We don't know yet. I mean, it could be worse. It could be same. But I'm hopeful for as pessimistic as I have been in this season recap, talking about this past season of the 49ers, that I hope that it can get better. I'm hoping that Kyle Shanahan can stop being as, what's that term that people out there that can be as ignorant as Rhea Ripley character-wise, can stop being as ignorant as a Rhea Ripley and take some accountability and fix this damn roster. Retool it and fix it so they can finally go and finish the story and hopefully create a sentence. I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, seriously. Go and retool this roster this past off season and do it right. Do it right next year. Because the upside in all of this is that, yeah, they have this long off season now. They have 2 extra months to recollect themselves, give themselves more time to fix what went wrong this year. Whether Kyle, like I said, is capable and, can be accountable for that, I don't know. But he better do it with John Lynch. And if he doesn't, especially with a much lighter slate, all the cards in place to finally finish the story next year for 6, next fall, I'm just saying, those cards are really in place next year. And if Kyle and John really mess this up, Jed York, I think he really needs to, show them the door. I really do. Because it would have been like, what, 9 years since they've been there, and no title to show for it. I'm not talking about NFC titles, NFC West titles. No, the big boy title, the finish the story title, the Cody Rhodes title, the Liv Morgan titles, the Tiffany Stratton titles, the Gunther titles, the fucking NBA like whatever, the Super Bowl title, the World Championships. Like, you've been there for 9 years and you got nothing to show for it. In 2020, 2025, 2026, finish the story in 2025. This is the best. Like, I don't know if I can say best opportunity, but there's upside. Like, I'm trying to be a little optimistic that there's upside for this team with a long off season, with that kind of strength of schedule, and cap space, decently high draft pick. Retool this team. Again, whether Kyle is capable of doing that, whether John Lynch is capable of doing that, just try. Just try. Look in the mirror and try. Hopefully they will. And put this 2024 season in the rearview mirror. Close the door on that thing. Put it in the darkest, deep depths of the freezer. And put that Very Cold Lasagna and slam it into the ground. And leave it alone forever. And yeah, that's exactly what we're going to do to close out this episode. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on this 2024 San Francisco 49ers season. This, I'd say, atrocity, disappointment, and I don't know, personal, like, craziness, and not in a good way for the 49ers. I don't know if I'd say footnote, because there's a lot of things that happen in this season, but I don't know. I like to know your thoughts. I like to know all of you all listening to this episode about the 49ers this past season, and can they get it done in 2025? And if they can get it done, or if they can bounce back in 25 at the very minimum, and make a playoff run, what do they have to do? What do the 49ers have to do to, at least at minimum, re-win the NFC West, make a playoff run in 2025? Let me know in the comments below. Let's have a conversation about it. And whether you're a Niners fan or not, hey, I like to talk to you about it. So, yeah, the 49ers season is done, but I mean, we're at least done talking about the 2024 49ers. They so far made some moves. Fired Nick Sorensen, fired Brian Schneider, and hopefully they'll make some good moves during this long offseason. And yeah, the work's not done here, though, when it comes to my 49ers. We'll continue to talk about them here on Very Cold Lasagna. And hopefully they'll be better next year. But yeah, until the next time we have to talk about them, thank you for tuning into this episode of Very Cold Lasagna. I have been your host, Dylan Lasagna. This is episode number 239 of this icy yet spicy podcast for all the filthy casual takes on the world of sports for all you listening out there. And until the next one, keep that lasagna very cold in the fridge with your filthy casual takes on sports. And until I see you, when I see you in the next one, we'll be talking about the NFL playoff games coming up this coming weekend in the next episode. And yeah, we're getting ready for the playoffs. And unfortunately, that doesn't involve my 49ers. But anyway, until I see you, when I see you in the next episode, peace out.